Oh wait, why can't we? Okay, already can't see you.
Hmm.
Hi, Carol.
Oh, hi. Okay, this is good.
We're back. It looks like the second class is smaller than the first.
Just the two of us. Someone else there too on.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else coming in? No? Oh, yeah. I've heard that one before. Oh, okay. Are you going to come back and pick him up?
Oh, okay. Zoom. Wow. Muted again.
I see you, Carol. What happened to my wife?
I don't know. I don't know. I lost your voice for a while.
Well, I know somebody turned off the router. They hit the
Oh,
switch.
hey, we don't need that.
Yes.
Uh,
I got most of it back. Yes. You trying to make me cry? I could hear it. I'm sorry, we're getting off to a rough start.
Hello,
Were you trying to get online?
me?
Yeah, for the Bible study?
No, I'm driving. In fact, I don't know where to go now. Just hold on. Let me pull over because I'll miss my directions.
Oh, no,
One
no,
second.
go ahead, do what you got to. I gotta go. Somebody tried to get on with my name.
All right. Bye, honey.
Bye. Well, let's hope things work better. Carl didn't realize that the router was hooked into that thing. So instead of pulling the plug out for the coffee pot, he hit the switch and it turned everything off in the whole strip. It's not easy being anything. Okay. All right. Can I have your attention, please? I love that song, but I can't listen to it now. Hey. Oh, you used to teach? Because I've got a woman in the Pines who's a long time member of this parish. And her eyesight's gone bad enough that she just cannot read. And she was wondering if I could find somebody to come over maybe once a week to go through her mail with her and things like that, maybe read her the Bible. Because she's yeah, because I thought you were a teacher. I don't know why, but I figured that would be a good thing. If there's anybody else interested in doing that, let me know, because this person's been with this church since I think the day it opened, and she's a really great lady, and she needs help. All right, we're going to start off with a prayer, and one of you are going to do it. And you can volunteer, or okay. No. Okay, go ahead. Just start us off with a prayer. Amen. Well, boy, I'm gonna have, the sad part about it is I don't let anybody go twice because there's only 7 weeks. Or I'd have you open up every prayer. All righty. Embracing the Uncertain is the name of the study. And it's all based, this first lesson is completely based off of one parable by Jesus. If you have your Bible, turn to Mark 9, verses 14 to 29. This should look familiar to you because last Sunday, remember I said I wasn't going to do the second half of the gospel? Well, this is the second half. This is not Luke's version. This is Mark's version, which I actually like better than Luke's. Mark 9, 14 to 29. Mark chapter 9, verses 14 to 29. And when they came to the disciples, they saw a great crowd about them and scribes arguing with them. And immediately all the crowd, when they saw him, were greatly amazed. And they ran up to him and they greeted him. And he asked them, "What are you discussing with them?" And one of the crowd answered him, "Teacher, I brought my son to you, for he has a dumb spirit. And whenever it seizes him, it dashes him down, and he foams and grinds his teeth and becomes rigid. And I asked your disciples to cast it out, and they were not able." And he answered them, "O faithless generation, how long am I to be with you? How long am I to bear with you? Bring him to me." And they brought the boy to him. And when the spirit saw him, immediately it convulsed the boy, and he fell to the ground and rolled about, foaming at the mouth. And Jesus asked his father, "How long has he had this?" And he said, "From childhood. And it has often cast him into the fire and into the water to destroy him. But if you can do anything, have pity on us and help us." And Jesus said to him, "If you can, all things are possible to him who believes." Immediately the father of the child cried out and said, "I believe, help my unbelief." And when Jesus saw that a crowd came running together, he rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, "You dumb and deaf spirit, I command you, come out of him and never enter him again." And after crying out and convulsing him terribly, it came out, and the boy was like a corpse, so that most of them said, "He is dead." But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up, and he arose. And when he had entered the house, his disciples asked him privately, "Why could we not cast it out?" And he said to them, "This kind cannot be driven out by anything but prayer." The gospel of the Lord. It does not take long for the shimmer of the transfiguration experience to fade as Jesus and the disciples briskly re-enter the problems of the real world. No sooner had Jesus, James, John, and Peter come down from the mountain where the transfiguration took place than they saw a large crowd gathered. Several religious officials were arguing with the other disciples. In the center of the discussion was a man whose son was possessed by what the Bible says was an evil spirit. It is possible that it was a literal demon, or it could have been the biblical writer's best way to describe a dark, emotional, and mental state, rendering the boy uncontrollable and mute. first note you should make. However, as much as the boy was suffering from debilitating physical elements, the real issue at stake was what was happening spiritually. Listen to that again. However, as much as the boy was suffering from debilitating physical elements, the real issue at stake was what was happening spiritually. The child's father had approached the disciples with a conviction and a confidence that simply coming to them would guarantee his son's healing. But as often happens when one chooses to follow Jesus, the man did not get what he was hoping for. The ending did not meet his expectations. His boy was still sick as ever, and he was starting to lose faith. The disciples were not able to deliver. That's when Jesus showed up, and the man piped up. He shared with Jesus his son's whole medical case file: foamy mouth, grinding teeth, stiff muscles. In response to hearing the whole diagnosis and the disciples' inability to help, Jesus responds with what appears to be an odd rebuke. You faithless generation, how long will I be with you? How long will I put up with you? Apparently, the father hadn't caught Jesus in the best of moods. But maybe what Jesus was offering here was not so much a rebuke of the man, but a reminder to everyone listening that there would be a time when he would not be with them. They would not have his real life, flesh and blood presence to see and hear and touch and experience. And if they were having trouble believing Jesus when he was around, imagine what it would be like when he wasn't. Jesus asked the disciples to bring the boy to him, at which point the boy's symptoms were put into full display. He fell to the ground, rolled around, foamed at the mouth. The father explained that the symptoms had been with him since childhood and that he had several near-death experiences. He was lucky to still be alive, but the condition of his life was really no way to live. You can write this one down. If you can do anything, help us, he cried to Jesus. If you can do anything, help us, he cried to Jesus. Show us compassion. Please do something. If you can do anything, Jesus asked, as if incredulous that the man would doubt his ability. Then he reminds the boy's father. This is the next thing you should write down. All things are possible for the one who has faith. All things are possible for the one who has faith. Now pause for a moment and think about how his father's anguish resonates with your own spirit today. For then the father put it bluntly. Immediately the father of the child cried out, I believe, help my unbelief. Write that one down. I believe, help my unbelief. What a peculiar response. In his distress, the father appeared to say two contradictory things at once: belief and unbelief, yes and no. I get it, but I don't get it. As you and I read the father's words, we wish we had the ability to ask him the obvious clarifying questions. What did you mean by that, sir? How can you believe and not believe? We don't understand, and we would really like some certainty. How in the world do we make sense of this statement? If a grammar teacher were there, she might have given him some grammatical advice. You seem to be missing a word in between those two statements, something to help us understand the relationship between I believe and help my unbelief. What you need is a conjunction. Looking at the original Greek doesn't help us at all. There is no conjunction there. So many English translations don't render one. Rather than having the luxury of asking his father personally for clarification, we're left to play fill in the blank with the gospel. There's a blank there, and it's asking us to fill it. First, we try the word however. That seems reasonable enough. Lord, I believe. However, that certainly seems to work because it is true for many of us. Yes, we believe. However, we still doubt. Yes, we live with certainty. However, we still have our jitters. We spend so much of our formative years acquiring knowledge to dispel uncertainty. We learn mathematics and science to figure out how the world works. We develop skills in language and communication to acquire and share ideas with others. We educate ourselves in philosophy, history, and sociology to determine our place in the grand scheme of human civilization. And you might want to write this one down. And every time we learn something, we add it to an ever widening foundation upon which we can frame our existence. I'll read that again. Every time we learn something, we add it to an ever widening foundation upon which we can frame our existence. However, there are also those moments that challenge our most basic assumptions. Read it one more time. Every time we learn something, we add it to our ever-widening foundation upon which we can frame our existence. However, there are also those moments that challenge our most basic assumptions. As we move from adolescence into adulthood, we are confronted by the unpredictability and chaos of life, suffering and tragedy, grief and loss. We experience events that shock us into the sobering reality that things don't always turn out the way we expect or even the way we hope. Like tectonic plates or frayed fabric, those basic assumptions we have made about the world shift beneath our feet or get tugged and pulled within us. All the knowledge and certainty we've carefully built up suddenly comes into question. Sometimes what happens in a college classroom in which a free exchange of ideas poses a question which you had never considered. Sometimes that happens in a church Bible study when someone offers a different way to interpret a scripture passage that challenges the way you approach the faith. Sometimes that happens at a graveside or in a doctor's office or in a courtroom or anywhere else in which the realities of life grab a singular thread and pull on a tightly wound fabric of your beliefs and of your assumptions. Life can be like a constant pendulum swing between certainty and uncertainty, belief and unbelief. And it is rare that those two extremes conveniently coexist. Lord, I believe. However, help my unbelief. To put the word however in the man's sentence is to suggest that belief and unbelief, certainty and doubt are an uneasy mix, even mutually exclusive. The word however says that we try as hard as we can to be confident, but acknowledge that we still fall short. Is that the nature of this father's peculiar response to Jesus? Is it equal parts profession and confession? An affirmation of his belief, yet a repentance for his own shortcomings? Well, if however is a reasonable possibility, I would like to suggest another, maybe one that is more likely and even more suitable for your situation today. How about the word therefore? I believe, therefore help my unbelief. Unlike, however, the word therefore suggests that belief and unbelief go together, because belief exists, unbelief exists as well. I therefore help the unbelief that naturally comes with it. In other words, certainty and uncertainty are not mutually exclusive, but are necessary co-companions in your earthly journey or in your journey of life. Write that one down too. Certainty and uncertainty are not mutually exclusive, but are necessary co-companions in your journey of life. They're the yin and the yang. They exist in our lives just as light creates shadows. If you have one, you must have the other. The more you grow in your understanding of who you are, the world around you, and the reality of God in your life, the more you must be aware of what you don't know and be ready for the surprises that lie ahead. The presence of the word therefore would be a reminder to us that tension and ambiguity in life are not always bad things. Struggling with what we know and don't know does not convey how weak we are, but simply how human we are. Write this one down. Faith is not the absence of doubt, but the embrace of it and ultimately the transformation of it. Likewise, courage is not the elimination of fear, but the regular interaction with it and conscious choice against it. The truth of the matter is we live in a time when there is more value in ambiguity and shades of gray than there is in rigid dogmatic certainty. Our world will be made better not by the extremists on the fringes who think everyone else has it wrong, but by those in the center who believe that there is value in dialogue. There's another one you can write down. Uncertainty is a certain part of life, and with its embrace can come transformation. It's interesting to note Jesus' response to the father who cried, "I believe, help my unbelief." Whereas in other stories, Jesus praised people for their faith or indicated how impressed he was. Jesus said nothing to this man, nothing at all. Mark moves on with the story as if the man had not said a word. Because of this, we are led to believe that Jesus found the man's response to be neither troublesome nor noteworthy. Perhaps it is because he found it to be so natural. Whereas we might labor over what the man's true motives were deep down, it seems that Jesus knew. He knew that the man was simply exhibiting all that it meant to be human. They couldn't help me. They didn't do what I asked them to do. Can you do it? Can you do anything? Will you do it for me? He knew that the man was simply exhibiting all that it meant to be human. This, after all, was the same Jesus who would say later in his life, in the very same breath, "Take this cup of suffering away from me. However, not what I want, but what you want." Jesus knew what it meant to be internally conflicted. So Jesus gave this man the most salvific non-response in the gospel. Instead of responding verbally, Jesus just moved on to the important business at hand. He entered right into the midst of the man's tension, and he spoke the demons out of his son's body. Noticing that the crowd had surged together, Jesus spoke harshly to the unclean spirit. "Mute and deaf spirit, I command you to come out of him and never enter him again." After screaming and shaking the boy horribly, the spirit came out. The boy seemed to be dead. In fact, several people said, "He's dead." But Jesus took his hand, lifted him up, and he arose. Jesus' response to the man's anguish, conflicted cry, was to bring healing. There is a lesson here for us all. You might want to write this one down. It's long, but it's good. When we are at our most vulnerable, at the point of acknowledging our deepest tensions, we need neither be judged or praised. We can simply be transformed, healed. I'll read that again. When we are at our most vulnerable, at the point of acknowledging our deepest tensions, we need neither be judged nor praised. We can simply be transformed, healed. Brought to a maturity that neither ignores nor condemns uncertainty, but embraces it for its benefit. If we insert the word therefore into the Father's cry, then we receive this great lesson. Don't settle for easy answers in life. Don't ever stop the thirst for learning, for checking your assumptions, for embracing the unknown. Don't ever stop maturing in your faith. Admit your doubts and acknowledge your questions. And if you are looking for a model in recent Christian history of someone who was able to hold his belief and unbelief together in balance, consider Thomas Merton. That's Thomas, Thomas, Merton, Merton. You can look it up on your Wikipedia when you get home. A prayer by Thomas Merton. Thomas Merton was a Roman Catholic monk of the Trappist order who wrote over 70 books on spiritual life. His autobiography, The 7-Story Mountain, that's Storey, The 7-Story Mountain, was named one of the 100 most important books in the 20th century by National Review. It detailed his remarkable conversion to Christianity from his teen years as an agnostic to when he became one of the most significant Christian authors of our time. One of his most famous prayers was part of his book, Thoughts in Solitude, first published in 1956. It touches on a universal theme of longing in the midst of confusion, as well as a desire to do God's will, even when discernment of it seems impossible. It conveys an intimacy with God when God seems most distant, and at the same time, a depth to a spiritual life when all one has is rote practice. It is the fusion of these extremes in creative tension that has contributed to the power of his prayer for many people. The prayer's powerful authenticity is evident from its first few lines. My Lord God, I have no idea where I'm going. I do not see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end. These words are a remarkable amount of candor coming from one so hallowed as Merton. But it is that honesty which makes his witness so comforting and relatable to the rest of us. Like Mother Teresa's, "Come be my light," or Dietrich Bonhoeffer's, "Who am I?" Merton's prayer gives us permission to reveal our innermost doubts. Merton goes on to admit that he does not truly know himself and that he may not, in fact, be following God's will, even when he thinks he is. Merton doesn't claim a perfect understanding of the Christian faith. He doesn't even state that such knowledge is ultimately and fully possible. But he believes as he prays that his desire to do God's will is in itself pleasing to God. And it is a good thing that simply having that desire is enough, for sometimes that is all we are capable of offering. Just like the father of the demon-possessed boy, Merton lived with this odd and seemingly untenable juxtaposition between belief and unbelief. But such a moment of tension, while uncomfortable, is stasis nonetheless. And it can be a time of great strengthening for our spiritual commitment. Might want to write this down. With all of the uncertainty embedded into his prayer, Merton claims one final, incontrovertible truth. We are not alone. I'll say it again. With all the uncertainty embedded in his prayer, Merton claims one final, incontrovertible truth. We are not alone. God is always with us, even in moments when God seems absent or distant. God will never leave you to confront life's trials alone. In the honest proclamation by the Father in Mark's Gospel, which is echoed in Merton's prayer, we have been given rich resources to embrace the uncertainty in our lives. Commit yourself to following the will and way of Jesus, acknowledging that life may not always meet your expectations or understanding. Those moments of uncertainty need not dispel your belief, but may actually strengthen it. Your desire to please God may, in fact, be pleasing to God in itself. Have you or a loved one ever experienced something akin to the dark emotional or mental state that the young boy in Mark 9 experienced? What kind of support and resources are helpful amid such a crisis? What kind of crises do we have? Moments of great darkness in our lives. Have you experienced that? My whole life. That's pretty bad. Yeah.
Grief, anxiety, fear, and depression too, which can follow all that.
In practical terms, in what instances do those things happen?
Well, let's say, for example, lose a lot. Well, an experience I went through last year. I had lost someone I really loved, and the house where I lived in, with her son decided to sell it, and I had like less than 5 weeks to do everything. I didn't know where I was going to move to. I didn't know if I was going to have the money. I had a pet dog, and I was worried about what I was going to be able to do with the dog. And then, of course, there was this person that was giving me a lot of stress and constantly harassing me. But I did, somehow I managed to get through it. And I do believe that there was divine intervention somewhere. I did eventually, I had the support of friends and relatives through all this. But of course, because I believe in God, I know that he entered the picture somewhere. So, I mean, it's just an example. I mean, anything, grief or, where you worry a lot about things.
Well, that's more than an example. That's a real instance.
Yeah.
You were in a place of darkness, of doubt, of uncertainty, not knowing where you're going to live or what you're taking with you, and you've got the issues of the loss of the person you loved and all the other things that go with that. That's pretty dark and dingy.
I think that was my supreme test. And I said to myself, I mean, things are working out well now. Everything worked out, thank God.
So we did enter into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't just work its way out, though. What were the resources that came to you that enabled you to pull through it? As a human being, we do not have the capability of doing it on our own.
No. I give most of the credit to, well, of course, first and foremost, God.
Okay.
Then, of course, my family, my friends, different organizations I belong to. They all came and helped me get through this because I couldn't have done it on my own.
No.
No, and I said to myself, if I can get through this, I think I'll get through it. I mean, I've had some very trying experiences before, where I thought I was gonna, but, reading the Bible is important because, I know that it helped me get through it. And, also, a case with my nephew, he was having issues, so I just told him, look, I don't want to tell you what to do, but just, read the Bible, maybe you'll find an answer. And everything turned out, it was like 180-degree turnaround. He met a nice woman, he got married, they have 2 children, he has a successful business, so definitely, I do believe that if you have a serious problem in your life, you're faced with serious issues, if you read the Bible and that'll help you. And of course, the support of family and friends helps a lot.
So you're saying that talking to God helped, whether it was reading the Bible or whether it was prayer. What did Jesus say about the demon? He said, this kind only can be taken out by prayer.
Right.
It's like saying, that's the big guns.
Well, I do believe, not just from watching all these horror movies, but I do believe that.
Was that a
there is
confession?
The confrontation between good and evil, good, especially the cross, will always win.
Ultimately.
Yes.
I saw some pretty nasty battles during the Crusades that we didn't win. But that's good. That's a great example. Anybody else have an example of something that's happened in your life that has been a dark, scary moment or a difficult moment or a moment of where you thought it was impossible to deal with it, and yet something became a resource for you to pull you through?
No, I'll just say that,
Wait 1 second, Carol's trying to, hold on, Carol.
okay,
Go ahead.
I'll just say that it took me many decades to learn that when it's easy, then it's right. And I was just saying, oh no, this can't be the right solution. It's too easy. But yeah, when it's easy and when you're in the flow or in God's light, then that's when the right thing is happening.
It's funny. I tell people that when I preach about the 10 Commandments. I think, my God, how easy can it be? 10 rules, practically only 2 or 3 words to each rule. Love God. Don't commit adultery. Honor your parents. Don't steal. Don't lie. Just 10 rules. And we can't get that straight. All these lawyers in the world and all these words they put in it, 10 words, 10 rules.
I was talking about, though, when you're deep in a problem.
Yeah, but the point
Then
is,
it becomes easy.
God gives us easy answers, and we're not willing to accept them.
Too easy.
Because exactly what you said, we think it's too easy. And so we avoid the obvious and try and find something more complicated and that deserves more attribution for having completed it, and this and that and the other. And we end up running around in circles and chasing our own tails.
Right.
When somebody dies and you miss them, you should acknowledge the loss. The physical absence is profound, but there's an easy answer. God died for our sins and we're going to live forever. Somebody asked me at the last session, they said, well, what are you going to do when you die? And I looked at him, I said, I'm not going to die. And then they all kind of stepped back and said, whoa, no, my body will die, but I'll never die. And I believe that with all my heart. Right. That's one of the prayers at the end of the funeral service. We have not died, but we have changed, life has changed, not ended. And that's the truth.
Hey, we're almost there.
Hey, let's not press it. Well, you're right. I say that to my wife all the time. I say, look, honey, don't worry about it. We're not going to be here long enough to enjoy it.
Our salvation is closer.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Anybody else have any other?
Divorce is also one that
Oh,
can cause lots of issues.
it's It's not what you planned. It's not the way it's supposed to work out. God didn't listen to my prayers. He didn't answer them. What are you doing to me? Yeah. But you can still turn to God and to your friends. Friends can be a very strong resource, especially Christian friends. They offer you acceptance. They offer you comfort. They offer you a whole lot of things that you can't comfort yourself. I mean, it's just like one of those crazy skits where the guy has two chairs and he keeps jumping back and forth, talking to the other person. We can't give ourselves hope or give ourselves comfort or encouragement. It doesn't work. It's like trying to play yourself at chess. You always know what's going on anyway, so it defeats the purpose of the exercise. The problem with trying to comfort yourself is you always lose. So, anybody have any other examples?
I was born, very bad, never taken care of. And I had the worst possible obsessive compulsive disorder you could possibly have, like you relate to this gentleman. With the anxiety is absolutely part of it. And my therapist told me it took a long time to get this way. This took one heck of a long time to change.
Yes.
And then a few years later, I was born again.
Mhm.
People were there making me free. And love came into my heart. It still took a lot of time for the Lord was able to straighten me out.
Mhm.
Then he brought this person into my life. He said, there's time for you. It's called meditation. Medication slowly started to work, and God was able to. Some people will heal instantly. Mine was a progression.
And that's okay.
100%? Absolutely not. He allows that, just like he allows yours. It's our cross in life, and we carry it. And everybody, and you have to go through certain pain. Everybody here has to go through pain. You know, and the Christians want to have a life of where it's easy, and no, we're gonna suffer some things. We have to, because we're told to do.
The negative must exist. It must exist by virtue of the fact that the good exists.
Didn't Christ say to those who choose to follow him, you're not gonna have an easy time?
Oh, man.
See, I know, like, even though I miss this lady, I mean, she was very religious. She, had a strong faith. I know that, I mean, her condition wasn't gonna improve. I mean, she ultimately died of COVID, but before that, even for a few years, she had to be on dialysis. I know that, I believe that she's in a better place and where she won't have to suffer. And that thought is comforting,
Mhm.
and, because sometimes, when I look at what's going on in the world, we see what's happening in Ukraine, Afghanistan, we see all the suffering these people go through, and, we say to ourselves, well, geez, thank God we don't have to go through that. And we pray for people like that, we hope things will improve. So,
Upside down on the cross. Oh, heck, I mean, that's when you say that you have to go through that.
I'd prefer to find a different route myself.
That's how we grow when we go through pain. Nobody likes it.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, I've done a lot of thinking about this question, and what I've come up with is, all life suffers.
Yes.
There's no exceptions. Even if you have the best life, if you love someone and your loved one is suffering, there's still going to be suffering in your life.
Right.
And once you realize that life is going to have suffering, then you can transcend it.
Yes.
Um,
There's a tension between knowing that there is good and reward in life and also realizing that at a given moment that you're not experiencing that. It feels like a loss. And sometimes it actually is a loss. And it sets up this dichotomy. I told the other group, I said that the tension in our life between the good and the bad, between the belief and the unbelief, between the faith and the unfaith, non-faith, and all those kinds of things, that tension is necessary. Because if you had all of either one thing, your life would be unbalanced. You'd be pulled so drastically into one direction, even if it's in a good direction, that would actually cause harm to you, because you wouldn't have a chance to appreciate the good because there was no bad to compare it to. It's just like when you look at a suspension bridge, it's under tremendous tension. And it wouldn't stay up if it wasn't. If you suddenly relieved the tension in the lines, the whole bridge would fall to pieces. And our life is like that. If you tried to suddenly make everything perfect, or for that matter, suddenly make everything something else because you believed it should be that way, your life will fall apart. It will collapse under under the lack of its own tension to hold it up. Do we want to have a lot of pain in our life? No, but we have to have some pain. If you don't see the good, if you don't see the evil or the bad or the hurtful, you cannot appreciate the good and the joyful, because there's nothing to contrast it to.
Well, I had a priest, at the priest, on the park. When you had pain, and if you didn't tell me for the rest, he said, you have pain, I had it, always run to always do that. Let it work its way into you. Don't always look for the fast fix to make it go away, because it's important to have that in your life, because it's there for a reason.
Yeah. And people who grab too much aspirin to get rid of their headaches end up with stomach ulcers. Yes.
I had an experience one time. I was working in these old buildings. We had a maintained sprinkler system, and the lighting was very poor. I tripped over something, and I put my hand to grab a 2x4, and it happened to be a nail in it, and went almost through my hand.
Ah.
Fortunately, I was able to go to the hospital, and they gave me a shot. And then before that time, I never really appreciated the suffering that Jesus Christ went through. Imagine laying on a cross for hours, having nails through your hand and feet. And I realized, and then about a year later, my parents' house caught on fire. The house next door caught on fire. And the house where the fire started, the neighbor died, unfortunately, but my family was spared. They were able to get out in time. So I realized all these things, you realize how close terrible things came to you, but you were spared. You were spared. And then you realize, you look at other people, what they have to go through, and say, I don't have it as bad as I think I do. I like the father was just saying, you can't appreciate the good unless you experience the bad.
Every face there's a smile, and every face there's.
Mhm. Let's go to the next question, because I want to cover them all before we get out of here. And it just rang 6 o'clock. When has doubt or suffering ever challenged your beliefs and assumptions about the Christian faith? Do you have a time in your life when you had doubts or disbelief in what you thought you believed in? I see Sheila nodding her head. Why don't you offer us a little insight?
I'm thinking about a lot of times during my life where there was a lot of pain, a lot of disbelief, and a lot of anxiety. And I don't know which one to pick, but there's been a lot of them. And I can just say that maybe this is one of the big ones. I was at the salon getting a haircut and all of that. And after she cut my hair, I started to feel this heaviness in my arms, in my legs. And I said, you know what? Don't blow dry my hair. Just gotta go home and lay down. And I lived about 20 minutes away from where I was. And on the way home, my car, it just somehow, there it was, and I was there. And I went in and I said to the lady, I don't know, I just feel funny. Can someone just, take a look and see? So they put me in the room, and all of a sudden, I see about 5, 6, 7 nurses all around me. And they're asking me, feel anything? Does anything hurt? Do you have any pain? No, I feel fine. I just want you to look at my arms. And all of a sudden, they're starting to say, who's primary care doctor? How can we, get in touch with family and all of that? And I'm saying, family doesn't have to know. I'm just gonna go home after you look at me. Well, within 15 or 20 minutes after I got there, with all the excitement around me, which I couldn't understand, I was in cardiac arrest. And they didn't think I was gonna make it, and they called my kids, and everything was really very sad from what I hear. My body blew up, all my organs started to fail, and I was, looked like I probably wouldn't make it through the night, from what I was told. So they called in a doctor when the heart stopped. They called in a doctor to do the paddles on me, and it happened to be this doctor named Dr. Guy, who was in the heart group that I went to with one of the doctors. And afterwards, he said to me, I actually wasn't sure if I was even doing it right. He said, I never did it before. And we used to paddle on anybody before you was my first one. And this guy's in his 40s. So I'm saying, he was just saying, dear Lord, please let me do it right. He told me he was praying while he was doing it. And got my heart going again, and I recovered, and thank God, everything turned out okay. And it was after that I started, well, one of the times after that, because I was in and out of my spirituality over a big span of time, like 27 years. And I did believe that God took me to that hospital. I did believe that the right person was there that didn't know what he was doing, but he did it right. And I was thankful and grateful. And that's, one of the times that I came back to my spirituality. And then I lost it again. Different things happened in my life, and I lost it again. And out of those times in my life. So, anyway, that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Thank
This
you.
is very good therapy, everybody's able to get out there. They have something that bothers them, like even in my case, it's other things. I have a guilt complex about certain things. I read somewhere in the Bible, I don't exactly remember where it is, but it said if you have if you feel very guilty about something, just think about something terrible that someone did to you. And if you can forgive them, that might help absolve some of your guilt.
Truth to that.
That's true.
That's
I learned how to forgive.
that's a technique that I've used to get rid of suffering.
Yeah.
Is focus instead of on yourself on the suffering of others.
Mhm.
And then in the process of you helping someone else, you get healed.
Absolutely.
Think of all the people that have it worse than you, the worst problems, and then you realize, gee, you know, I don't have things as bad as I think I do. I mean, that helps me.
Well, faith is the whole basis of this parable. He had faith that it would be healed, but then he was disappointed because he wasn't. Then he had faith in the apostles, but now he's going to Jesus, and since they just screwed up, his faith in Jesus is a little wonky. You know, if you can do it, for God's sakes, do something. You know, and we go through things like that in our life all the time, and the funny part of it is what we would see as something being negative and bad and disrespectful and, you know, all these other things turns out to be the thing that brings you back to reality. If he hadn't been upset enough to say something to Jesus, Jesus never would have been requested to come and do the healing. He had to get pissed off at him in order to find out what it was that was hurting him and motivating his pain and his discomfort in his life. I mean, it seems obvious at the beginning. His son's doing these things and he's upset about it, but he wanted him healed and he didn't get healed. And that's what really had him upset. His faith had been let down. And he saw that as a failure. And because he saw it as a failure and because he was willing to complain about it to Jesus as a failure, Jesus turned it around and turned it into a healing and turned it into a reconciliation between the man's faith and his relationship with God. Faith is really, really important, but faith is not constant. There are always moments of doubt in our faith. I would venture to say that everyone here at one time or another has been lying in bed at night in the dark, closed their eyes and said, I wonder what it feels like to be dead and feel nothing, to not hear, to not see, to not taste, to just be. And then you start getting that sinking feeling like you're going to fall off a bridge. And all of a sudden you wake yourself up and you say, that's it, enough of that. But that moment, the moment of doubt that there is anything on the other side, trying to see what it might be like, actually proves in and of itself that there is something on the other side and that you can't imagine not being. You are, your soul is. God gave it to you. Now, the only sad part about that is you might be is up there or you might be is down there. And that's a whole nother issue.
Well, you know, like, I used to hear, when I went to Catholic school, you know, they would tell us things like, oh, one mortal sin will bring you into hell. But I don't really go along with that because I think that actually we're all sinners. We all sin, whether, even if we don't want to. But the thing is, as long as we have the faith that we can overcome things, you know, to me, it's according to who you follow. If you choose to follow Christ, you know, there's hope in your life, no matter what happens.
Through the blood of the
Now, if you
cross.
choose to follow the devil, well, that's inevitably, that's probably where you'll wind up with. It's who you choose to follow.
I don't like his residence. I don't like the heat. I'm a cold guy. Yes.
To me, heaven and hell aren't a place.
Okay.
Heaven and hell are a condition. And that condition is either a nearness to God or a separation from God. And it's not, when you're close to God and when you feel God in the heart, that's heaven. And you can feel that here on earth.
Mhm.
And likewise, you can feel hell here when you feel separated from God.
Mhm.
And you feel that there's not only does God support you, but no one else around you supports you. And so, to me, it's more of a condition instead of a place.
Well, when we're on earth, you're right. There is heaven and hell on earth in different instances. However, God is always with us. But the question is, do we acknowledge his presence even in the moments of pain and suffering or hurt or loss? Or do we think that because we're experiencing those things that he's no longer there? Jesus never leaves our side. And that's one of the things that's so sad about people who end up going to hell. Some of them going to hell thinking that Jesus doesn't care. And Jesus is literally standing behind them on the way there, waiting for them to turn around and just ask for forgiveness and take his hand and go back to his heavenly kingdom. Now, as far as after our physical bodies die, there is a place which is where souls reside in the presence of God. And we do maintain communication with those who've left this earth. I'm not talking about seances now. That's bad stuff, seances. But the communion of the saints, the unity of the body of Christ, the membership of all those who have been baptized and marked with as Christ's own forever with the oil of chrism and the blessing of the Holy Spirit. We never lose touch with each other. When our loved ones die and go to heaven, the same way we pray to God and say to God, this is how I feel, this is what's going on, we can do that with our loved ones. Now, we won't necessarily get the same response from them. I'm not sure what the two-way communications is like, but I have had people tell me they've had loved ones come and visit. They have had people speak to them in their dreams. And I don't think that's all just psychology. And my undergraduate degree is in psychology. And I was published in the APA before I even got my BA. And I know what I'm talking about with that stuff. There can be psychotic episodes with people, but for the most part, if you are talking to someone you love in heaven and telling them about what's going on in your life and things, you are in that communion of the saints. You are able to know that they hear you, and many, many times you can feel, not necessarily hear audibly, but you can feel the response that they're offering you, that the love, the concern, the presence. And it doesn't mean that they're going to appear. It doesn't mean they're souls lost on earth and wandering around and that kind of crap. What it means is that they love you so much that even in the presence of God in his heavenly kingdom, with their comfort and salvation wrapped up in a bow and tied up neat, they still care about you, and they still care about their relationships with you as their sons and daughters and friends and so forth.
There's just too many cases where people have reported the seeing of a loved one on a deathbed or something to them. It's just too many cases. People that are nearest death will be visited by loved ones.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases.
So in our physical bodies, heaven and hell are on earth. And I agree with that our condition or situation on earth can determine whether we're experiencing a heavenly or hellish situation. However, once we leave this earth, once we leave this physical body, this earthly body, and go to our heavenly body, which isn't a whole lot different, to be perfectly honest with you, it's just that it's immortal and doesn't have any degeneration or anything. When we get to that place, then we are in a place. There is a heaven and there. Now, separation, absolutely. Hell, whether or not it's fire and brimstone, I'm not sure about that. It seems that it could be, but hell is permanent separation from God in the sense that if you remember the parable about Lazarus, and he says that there's a great gulf between us fixed. You can never come and see your brother and sisters again. You can never come and see me again. You're permanently separated from us. And you're absolutely right on that. That's the greatest damnation we can receive, is never to be able to be in the presence of the God who created us and loves us. And he even loves us when we're in hell, for that matter.
I think everybody took a verse out of the Bible from Genesis to Revelation and read about hell. You will come to the conclusion that there is an actual hell and there is suffering and fire.
Yeah.
What was the last part you said?
There is suffering, the real suffering in hell.
Suffering, fire, demonic beings are there.
I didn't catch the ending.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the next question.
Just like there are angels in heaven.
Mhm. Yeah.
How did the doubts that we were just talking about and the contradictory feelings about our beliefs, in what ways might they even have eventually strengthened your convictions? I think we really answered that already, because we were talking about how you can't have good without bad, and so on and so forth. So the experience of the negative and God's rescuing us from that negative through his promises and through his word and through our prayer life and so on and so forth, that actually ends up strengthening the fact that we do believe that our faith is valid. The worst moments are the moments where we have the doubt. You know, your a loved one dies, and the first thing you do is shake your fist at God and say, "How could you let this happen? You know, you're not real. You're not caring. You're not loving." And that's a normal result. And just like with the man who said, do you think you can do anything? He said, anything you can do, just like he said that to Jesus, we say what we say, and God doesn't condemn us for our human reactions, for our human frailties. Instead, he gives us an opportunity to see his love for us and give us the chance to change our attitude and to change our understanding of him. But let's go to the next one. How would you describe the relationship between faith and uncertainty? I believe, help my unbelief. You have any thoughts about that? I think we did that too.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Talking about
Yeah.
one can't exist without the other.
That the world was created out of chaos.
Oh, amen.
Chaos still exists here.
Yeah.
And,
I think we're headed back on it pretty quick the way things are going. Okay, read the first words of Thomas Merton's prayer again. What part's helpful? Does the knowledge that even a formidable writer and teacher like Merton felt doubt bring comfort to you, and how? Let's read that over again real quick. My Lord God, I have no idea where I am going. I do not see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end. I mean, with Merton, I mean, you're talking about one of the most spiritual guys in the world. You know, he gives Mother Teresa a real run for her money. And yet he is able to say to God to his face, I don't know what's going on here. I am absolutely unsure of everything. All I know is that you're in charge. That's it. And I don't know when my life is going to end, or my doubts are going to end, or my questions will be answered, or any of that stuff. So when you hear a guy like him say that, does that give you a little more hope? I know it helps me, to be honest with you. Last question. Where is there uncertainty in your life, especially in your faith? What would it mean to embrace the uncertainty? How might doing so lead you to a deeper faith? You have to have faith. We already established that, even if it's the size of the mustard seed. We have to give Jesus a chance to do what Jesus does without judging how he does it. Could you imagine if that guy said, aren't you going to answer my question? Would have stopped Jesus in his tracks from doing what he was about to do, which was heal his son. How do we do that? How do we live with both the doubt, which even in the best of us is real and more frequent than we would like to admit, and the side of us that knows that God is there and just isn't sure quite how to approach him on a particular matter?
How about my situation with the lung cancer?
Okay.
And that went back, I guess, last October maybe.
Yeah.
And it started that I had gone to the heart doctor, and they took CAT scans and whatever and showed me the films with the lung cancer, with all lit up here, there,
Mhm.
everywhere on this thing. And that went on October, November, like December. Then this January, they finally decided I have to go to the oncologist now and get set up for whatever, chemo or whatever. And the oncologist took whatever, the last record that I had, the last CAT scan, the disc. He put it in his machine and he says, I don't understand this. He said, There's nothing there. It's gone. And I told you, I said, thank you, Jesus. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, everybody's been praying for me. I said, my whole church has been praying, my friends have been praying, everybody's been praying. I said, prayer works. He says, what church do you go to? Fine. Yeah, amen, right?
Yeah, it's also like the one of my local prayer warriors who does a lot of work with me in healing is Phyllis. And that's it. Her name is just Phyllis. She has no last name. And Phyllis and I have done a lot together. We brought a healing mission here a few years ago. And the guy came and actually taught people how to do healing and how to go about allowing your faith to be focused into the task at hand and handing it over to Jesus and not taking credit yourself and so on and so forth. And this young man who had had a drug problem had injured his foot. He was doing tree trimming, surgeoning, and his boss accidentally slipped and the chainsaw went across his toes and caused pretty severe damage. And the doctors took a little good care of him there, and they came back, and then they realized that the gangrene had set in. And they tried to work on it, and it was working its way. It had gotten up past the ankle from the big toe, and the skin was pretty dead. It was black, and the doctors finally told him, they said, "Look, we're going to have to amputate your foot." And this put some fear into this guy. And I mean, I know I wouldn't like the idea, and I'd probably be a little afraid, but I don't know that I reacted quite the way he did. And he calls up the church and he says, "Father Paul," he said, "you have to help me." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You have to pray and heal my foot." And I said, "What's the matter with your foot?" And he told me the story. And I just told him, I said, "Honestly," I said, "I cannot give you any guarantees. I can't promise you." I said, "I've prayed and had results, or we've prayed here at the church and had results. But I said, sometimes we've prayed and haven't had results." And I said, "There's no guarantees at all." I said, "You have to be prepared for whatever the outcome's going to be." And he said, "Okay." And he came over and I looked at it and I prayed for him, but I told him, I said, "This is more than I can deal with." I said, "I have faith, but help my unbelief." And I called Phyllis up, and Phyllis came over and we prayed as a team. And he went home, and the next day he came again and we prayed as a team. And he went home and he came again and we prayed as a team. Then he went to his doctor. And the doctor said, "We have to take this foot off, because if we wait too much longer, this gangrene can spread up the leg, could get into your system, could kill you, could go to your heart." And he says, "I don't want to." He says, "They're praying for me." He says, "Friend, I wouldn't take that chance." He says, I think you need the surgery now." And he says, "We're going to wait." He says, "I'll be back in a week and you tell me what things look like." So we kept up every day for a week, back and forth in prayer. Sometimes here at the church, it's a couple of times at Phyllis's house, once or twice at his mom's house. And he went back to his doctor in a week, and the doctor looked at it and said, that's odd. Seems to have stopped. And he says, "Well, but that doesn't matter." He said, this is gangrene. You can't undo gangrene," he says. "And whether it stops here or not, that foot is still dead and we've got to take it off." And he says, "No," he says, "I'll be back in a week." And we kept doing this stuff. And every time he went to the doctor, the gangrene had receded further and further, and fresh, healthy, pink flesh was replacing it. It went all the way down to where there was only about a piece the size of maybe $50 by the toe left of the gangrene. Everything else had healed. And the doctor said himself, he said, "This is a miracle." He says, "Because this can't happen." He says, "You can't replace dead flesh. It's impossible." He said, "So this is miraculous." The kid thought that meant his problems were over and stopped coming to us. Then he went to Florida with his friends to party, to celebrate the fact that he was getting better. And he died of an overdose. God had acted in his life in ways that showed doctors and nurses and his family and even me and my prayer warrior friend the power of prayer and the wonder of God's grace and mercy and healing grace. And he threw it away for a lousy goddamn party and a shot of something that killed him. I've never been so angry at a guy. I forgave him because I don't want him to go to hell. But I was so angry when it happened. Every time I think about it, I want to cry. This was a guy that could have gone around all over and said, look at my foot. This is what God did for me. This is what God can do for you. And instead, he killed himself. Not on purpose. I don't mean that. Probably fentanyl. It's recent enough that it could have been.
What you just said.
Well, it does help a lot of people, but still, it's just, sometimes you've got this conflict, this tension, not just in your own life, but in the lives of the people you love and care for. Go ahead.
I mean, a lot of people here, we all have our doubts, and your doubts are fought back by scripture reading, because faith is right here in your mind. God's word is pure, it's perfect. This answers everything in life. Because nobody can tell me that it was contradictions. I had a guy one time said, well, it's contradictions and everything. I said, show me. He said, well, I never read it before. Our faith will contradict, will attack doubt. And we will struggle with that all of our lives. That's why it's very important to read God.
But there is a legitimate doubt in our lives because we understand our own humanity. That's one reason why when he said, can you heal me? Even though I prayed for people and they've been healed before, I looked at that foot and I thought, this is not what I want to take on right now. Thank you very much. And I called Phyllis to kind of cover my tush for when it failed. I wasn't locked in the way I ought to be with the healing power of Jesus. And it took time and it took prayer with her and working together for the good of this guy and his faith to keep coming back. I'm not saying he wasn't a faithful man. I'm saying he was stupid.
You don't want to remember that. Remember, you asked us during Mass to pray for him.
Yes, I did. I don't listen. I never did. People say, how come you can heal people? I say, I can't do a damn thing. All I can do is believe and ask God to do what God does. And if I do it in faith and I do it expecting results, things will happen that we never dreamed in our life are possible. And you're an example of that. Thank God you didn't go out and party. And he was an example of that. And I feel so sorry that he threw away a life that could have been valuable to not only himself, but to other people that would have a chance to meet him and see God's healing grace in action. Kind of like Judas.
How old is he, Father? He's probably in his early 50s.
No.
Oh, yes.
No, he wasn't that old.
I think so.
No, I think not. I'm going to let my pride get the better of me. It was, I don't think, I think he was at the very oldest, his early 40s. He was still climbing trees and cutting things and doing it. He looked a lot older than that because of his drug abuse.
Yeah.
But he wasn't.
Yeah.
And he was one of the youngest sons of the family, in fact. It was, well, every single son in her family died from drug. And now eventually she died, believe it or not, of lung cancer.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah. And she kept telling me, I prayed, Father, I prayed, Father, I prayed, Father. And I said, it's not your fault. I said, you prayed. God did what he was supposed to. And the boys didn't listen. And there's nothing you can do. That doesn't mean they went to hell, but it means they suffered the consequences of their sin. And maybe when you get to heaven, you'll find they're there and forgiven by God, but they won't be sitting in one of the big seats at the front of the table. But they'll still be in heaven and they'll still be there. I've got homework for you. You're going to want to write this down. Once we get the books, everything will be right in front of you. You can even follow me while I read. It says, spend some time writing a prayer in your own words. In other words, I don't want And Juliet of Norwich says, all will be well. No, I want your words. Don't want somebody else's words. And it should express your doubts and your confidence in God. Spend some time writing a prayer in your own words that express your doubts and your confidence in God. Now, it suggests that you might even journal the specific nature of your doubts that in some way connect to the concerns of the Father in Mark 9, for instance. So if you want to spend each day, write a little something about what your doubts were and why you think they were what they were, or how you overcame them or whatever, put that in your journal. We're not going to read that, but it's healthy for you. And I'd like to know who does that. Write out all the ways in which you find yourself saying, I believe, help my unbelief. Okay? Now, I had you open with a prayer, but I will always close with a prayer because they provide it. Sure.
Now, the apostles were healing and driving out demonic beings. And
Yes.
He sent them out and everything.
Yes.
And they came to him in what you read. And they said, why could not we cast out the demon?
Right.
Yeah.
And Jesus said, this kind need prayer and fasting.
Yeah.
Where the others, he was able to throw them out of the bodies. But this kind needs prayer and fasting. And my question is, it's an answer plus a question. It's a hierarchy. This kind.
No, I wouldn't say a hierarchy. I'd say a variety. Not exactly. 3 different kinds of demons, different talents, different purposes, but not necessarily one being ranked above the other. In hell, there's only 2 ranks: Satan and everybody else. And heaven, it's a little more organized than that. You've got God, and you've got the archangels, and then the angels, and the cherubim, and the seraphim, and so on and so forth. But each with their own purpose. But that there is a ranking in the heavenly angels. I'll tell you one time I dealt with serious demonic stuff. When I'd been in my last place about half the time I was there. It would have been about 8 years. And I had been going to visit a parishioner, and she came to church a few times, but there was always something odd about her. And I couldn't, even with my psychology degree, I couldn't put my finger on it. Because when she was with me, she was fairly consistent, but there seemed to be something that was off, and I couldn't figure what it was. I get a telephone call from her psychiatrist. Says, is this Father Paul? I said, yes. You know so-and-so? I said, yes. They said, he says, I need to talk to you. I said, okay. I said, do you want me to come to the office, or do you want to come to mine, or do you just want to talk on the phone? He says, we need to talk about this in person. I said, okay. We go to his office, we're talking on the phone, and he picks up the phone and he calls the woman. And a different voice answers the phone, and a different name of the person. And and when they have a conversation, they hang up. And I said, why did you call her? He says, that was so-and-so. He says, and if I call again in an hour, it will be a different person. And if I call an hour after that, it will be a different person. She had 8 distinct personalities. The one that went to church was the one I knew, because in church, none of the other personalities could come to the surface because they weren't church people. But this one person was a church person and was there. So what I felt was the conflict of the other personalities underneath, even though they didn't express themselves directly. And I said, well, that's pretty serious. He says, yes. He says, I need your help. I said, why? He says, I need you to do an exorcism. I said, a who? I said, you're a psychiatrist. It's a multiple personality case. Don't you have a drug for that? He says, I'm telling you, I've worked with this woman for 6 years. She is not just a multiple personality case. She is possessed. And he says, we need an exorcism. He says, can you do that? I said, technically, I'm able. I said, we do have a diocesan exorcist. And he says, I feel she would feel safer with you if we go through this process. I said, well, let me call and ask. So I called the diocesan exorcist and I said to him, I said, look, this is the story. I said, I've never done this before. I said, I'm not sure what to do. And he says, I will give you the necessary preparation. What was the first thing? Prayer. We had to pray. Without the prayer, it never would have happened. There was Bible reading, there was fasting, there was all kinds of things for a couple of weeks that I was doing. And he said, in all honesty, we should go on further, but that the doctor says she needs it now, she needs it now. I got a team of 5 other people who were prayer warriors in that church, not unlike Phyllis in those ways. We all went over, we spent 3 days at her house in the basement, praying, saying the rosary, doing the mass, using holy water, all the different things we had to do. And one at a time, we would get rid of a personality. You didn't just do them all. One would get out. And when that one was out, you called the next one up. So, okay, next customer. And scary, like you don't know scary. Fearful of my own soul and the fact that it could be ripped out of me and dragged into hell while I'm trying to do what's right for God. So bad that we had to take shifts and take time to rest and to eat in between what we were doing. Communicate. Huh? Oh man. Each one had their own voice, each one had their own personality, each one said their own nasty words and threaten us, what they're going to do to us and so forth. And eventually we got through all 7, and the last one that was left was her. The last personality left was her real, true personality. And she had lived like this with 3 children in the house for their whole life. And the husband was getting ready to leave her. And that's what prompted the big outburst, because the demons thought they'd won. And they didn't. And they lost. And what was really most ironic, 2 years after we had finished the exorcism, the husband left her because he couldn't deal with the fact that she was so independent now. It was crazy. All of a sudden, she could do everything for herself. She could take care of the kids. She could do the shopping. She could, and he couldn't deal with it. He needed somebody who was dependent.
She didn't have that all her life, it just came back.
Well, she had that a long time. It began with satanic abuse in her childhood. And I don't even want to talk about that, but
Did you ever have any consequences after that?
myself,
Yes.
No.
As they were out to get you.
Nope. Well, once they were out, they were gone and back to hell. But the point is,
Back to hell. There you go.
yeah, the point is that those things are deadly real. And when we read these stories like this one, and even this guy, as good as he is, he said, or it could have been. He says it could have been demons, absolutely, but it also could have been. And he was softening it just a little bit, not unreasonably so, but he still softened it. And we have to acknowledge the evil in the world. We have to also acknowledge the fact that we, through the power of God, through the blood of the cross, through the healing grace of Jesus Christ and the power of his Holy Spirit, are able to confront these things in our life. They don't all have to be multiple personalities or evil demons or fits and rage and foaming and all that kind of stuff. It can be something as simple as a pornography obsession. That doesn't just come from someplace for no reason. Somehow it was introduced to someone's life. Someone did something.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. I was just talking to, I can't tell you any details, but I was talking to someone the other day about a family member of theirs. And I said, my suspicion is that they were abused as a child, that their obsessive compulsive behavior, their distaste for men, their confrontation of their spouse in their love life, that I'm disgusted by you and things like that, they would say, is based on some experience in her childhood. And she might not even realize it. There might not be any logical connection for her in her thinking and in her acting. But that's what I would suspect. I have dealt with a lot of people with the sexual problems and what do you call it?
Incest.
All that kind of stuff. And let me tell you, and also abortion. People who've had abortions feel terrible guilt later. And then 9 times out of 10, they'll say to me, I didn't really want to do it, but everybody told me it was okay and necessary. Temptation comes from human sources as well as demonic sources. And we all have obsessive compulsive behaviors. There is no one alive. I don't care who you are and know how many times you tell me I'm not obsessed with anything. Freud had a theory which in and of itself was debunked about the libido and how all women were all wrapped up in the sexual loving of their fathers and all this other kind of crap. That's not true. A lot of fathers abuse their daughters. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that they aren't wrapped up in anything. But we do all have an energy, a life energy in us. And you could call it the libido because most people do live it out, or I should say many people do live it out through their sexual love of their partner. That it relieves their tensions. It reduces the stress in their life and things like that. And that's not a put down on lovemaking. That's just the realities of how it works. However, that doesn't always do the trick. And everybody finds out. Some people find alcohol. Become obsessed with alcohol, and as long as they're high on drinking, they don't worry about the rest of their worries, and they think they're okay. Some people use drugs, like that poor guy who went down and partied and killed himself after he got the healing grace of Jesus Christ in his life. Some people do it sexually. Some people do it by being overachievers in their work. As long as they're getting awards and being acknowledged as being the best in their field, they're feeling good and they're okay. But that's an obsession. They do it at the cost of their family and their children, and go into the soccer games and taking their wife out for a date night and all kinds of other things that they don't do because of that. Some people are artists. Some people are authors. Some people, my brother Mark, who's a priest, he's also a marathon runner. He'll do 6 marathons in a year, easy. And I told him, I said, you're out of your mind. Of course, I told him that too when he was jumping out of airplanes, parachuting. I love I'm a risk taker, but trust me, I'm a huge risk taker. But the one thing I won't do is jump out of an airplane. But yeah, one that works very well and can hold us up there in the sky. Yes.
Now, I mean, we all know that, like, let's say, for example, you feel that you're aware that there are other personalities or demons trying to possess your wife. Now, as long as.
Not my wife.
What?
Life.
Oh, I thought you said possessing your wife. I said, not my wife.
Life.
That's all I needed to go is, Paul. Okay.
If I feel there's demons trying to possess me, now, as long as I keep the cross and I keep, let's say, praying to Christ, please drive these out, will that work?
As long as it's done in faith.
Yeah.
It has to be faith. This is where sometimes we have to be really careful about our time of doubting and our time of not doubting. We can't, if we believe we're lost, they will get us. And that happens a lot to people. They figure, I can't fight this. It's bigger than I am. It's more powerful than I am. And God isn't paying attention to me. And I'm lost. And that's when you actually can get lost.
But if you have a strong faith and you pray to Christ every day, please, like, for example, if you feel something evil is starting to make you, like, you have intense anger or you start cursing or something, all of a sudden, please drive this out of me.
I wouldn't even say you have to be that specific. Jesus, help me.
Yeah,
It's sufficient.
that's what I do.
As long as it's a sincere request. People keep telling me, why are you using the name of the Lord in vain? I said, I didn't. I just heard you say it. I said, Jesus. I was praying. I was calling him.
Yeah. And you have the power inside of you.
Yeah, because I mean, I know that there's a certain amount of evil that's trying to possess me based on past experiences. I mean, I don't go into bars. I try to stay away from anything that's gonna cause a confrontation, but I know that things from the past are trying to creep back up, and I just said, please, drive that out of me. And then I feel better, you know, I mean, it happens. I have a crucifix in my car, I have a crucifix in my bedroom, and I have a cross in my living room, and I just, you know, as long as that presence is there, I feel that'll help subdue whatever evil is.
What the cross does, or the crucifix, is it reminds you of the sacrifice of Christ in which you have faith, and it is the faith that does the work. The cross, in all honesty, that's just a piece of wood. Even when we bless it, it's still just a piece of wood. And it has no power in and of itself, except to remind you that the power of Christ lies within you. And that's the most important thing it does.
Because I think there's good and evil in every person. It's just, you know, what you choose. What you choose, you know, you ultimately, you make the choice.
Yeah,
Father.
yes.
You remember a very long time ago, maybe 8 years or so, maybe more or less.
I'm lucky if I can remember last week.
It was the
Me too.
doing mass. There was a person in our church. Yes. That I think it was when you were doing the consecration. These sounds came out of this lady that stopped us all in our tracks. It grabbed my hand. Oh, she did? You was there. It was, I remember she had a yellow outfit on. I remember it was just a woman. But the sound, Father, you was stopped also, and then you just continued. But there was a devil in our church. Oh, absolutely.
No, there was a devil in the person.
In that person. In our church. Well, she was in our church.
She was in our church, but the devil wasn't.
But we never
She,
saw her before. She was somebody new.
and she never came back either. No, she definitely had difficulties. And if, oh yeah, I had, what do you think? I think I stopped. I was praying quietly. Had I done anything overt, I probably would have been accused of being a showman. But
we had a full house that day. We had a lot of people.
yeah, but the point is, like always, everyone in the church was patient and tolerant and focused on what they were supposed to be doing, which was praising God and receiving their Eucharist. If they had gotten upset or hollered at her or started a confrontation or walked out of the church because they didn't feel comfortable, imagine what could have happened.
After she made that whole ruckus, she was gone.
Yeah. Well, let me wrap up the other thing with it, because there's not much we can say about that. If I didn't have a chance to talk to her, I didn't have a chance to know what was happening. All I know is it was something that which appeared to be very untoward. But going back to the thing about the libido, the life force in us, it has to be expelled, not in a negative way, used. It has to create something or be used to make something happen in our life that brings a satisfaction or a response, a positive response to us. The problem is when what we're doing feels good, but is in truth hurtful, like the drugs and the alcohol and the illicit sex and the ignoring of loved ones and all those different things that can happen. So how do you correct it? Look at any good therapist. What do they do when somebody has a negative obsession? They teach them how to redirect the energy, how to redirect it to something which will receive the same amount of energy and power and everything else, but will be something which is good and positive and constructive and helpful. So that when you have that temptation to, who said it, run out to the bar or to go to the go-go place or to run to the corner of Actually, it's Fifth and Broadway, but in Camden. I live there, so I know. And purchase your drugs. When you have that urge, instead of following that urge in that direction, you redirect it to the thing which is equally as satisfying, but in a positive way. Go out to the garage and work in your workshop. Take a drive to the park and watch the sun go down. Do whatever you take. Tell your wife, honey, tonight's the night. I mean, whatever happens to be the thing that allows you to use that energy in a positive, constructive, godly way. And that ends up being the thing that works. And if you do it, you become obsessed in that new thing. All you care about is pleasing God by being creative in your workshop, or by being loving to your wife, or by being more effective in your prayer life, or whatever the new obsession happens to be. But that energy still has to be expended. You can't hold it in, or you go pop, no matter what. That's why some people, how did he turn bad so fast? He popped. The energy got unused. And he finally got tempted so badly that he just did what was going to bring him the greatest sense of satisfaction in his life immediately. And that's what happened. Some people feel that satisfaction murdering. Some people feel that satisfaction raping. I mean, some of those things become really, really bad. And you've got to find a way to redirect those energies, or you end up like Manson or like Clinton. Either one. The energy has to be put into a positive, how can I say it, God approved hobby.
Endeavor.
So anyway, that's all I have to say about that. Oh, that's what we said the last 3 times.
We're back to heaven and hell.
Heaven and hell.
And when someone dies.
I can give you the zip code.
When someone dies, you believe the soul immediately goes. Your body remains, the soul goes.
Right. Poof,
Right.
gone.
I have always thought that everyone, the soul goes to heaven. That's my impression. And when the day of judgment comes, then God would judge you, and then you either stay.
What did Jesus say to the man on the cross?
Right, yeah, you will be.
Well, what did he say?
Today you will be
Where?
in heaven.
No, he did not. He said, today you will be with me in paradise. That's not heaven. That's kind of like the waiting room in the movie with the elevator. Not the elevator, the stair, what was it, the escalator. Ever seen the movie with the escalator where he goes to heaven right after he rides the escalator up and gets off at the top? You never saw that. All right, well, let's not worry about that. Point is, paradise, you know what paradise is? Paradise is the garden which is isolated for the king to walk in with his confidants so no one can hear what he's saying. If you notice, in every palace, in every beautiful place, like Taj Mahal, whatever it is, outside there's a maze.
Yeah.
That's paradise. That's where they can talk honestly and directly to each other, where they can discuss important matters. No one can hear them, and they can be together and enjoy each other's company and presence without interruption.
You're the ones that don't go to heaven and go to paradise.
Well, no. I think everybody goes to paradise eventually, and that's where the judgment will occur, I believe. I mean, that now I'm talking personally, but everyone goes directly. Those who are already saved, already judged as good, they can go directly to heaven.
Who's they can judge by God?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think that came until judgment day.
Oh, you didn't hear about Judas, did you? He was judged before. He even died because of his judgment. Yeah, and on the opposite side, people like Enoch, and who's the other Enoch, and there's 2. And the Blessed Virgin Mary, they were the ones taken right up into heaven without even dying. They were so good. They skipped step 2 and went directly to step 3.
Yeah.
Father, wasn't it when our Lord ascended, he took up those that were in paradise with him? Yeah.
He could have. That's not. It's not clearly biblical. It could. It's a possibility. But the point is, that's where we have a little bit of room to talk about things. But the point is, when you die, your spirit goes directly to something heavenly. It does not lie in a grave
Yeah.
and wait asleep for something else to happen.
And it's not going to hell.
Well, our Lord's parable about the rich man, he died and he was buried. And in hell, lifted up his eyes, being in torment.
Yeah. It's possible they go directly to hell. I just know that when Jesus said paradise, he was indicating an in-between place. Otherwise, he would have said heaven or my Father's kingdom.
Would that be like purgatory?
No purgatory.
There's no purgatory.
No purgatory.
They taught us purgatory.
You may wait someplace, but that just means you're waiting. You're not earning points to go to heaven. Purgatory was a thing where they said people that had sins of a particular nature could be where, and if you paid the church enough money, then they'd get to go to heaven. Which reminds me, I've got a fee. No, I said that already. Yes.
You know, the story just mentioned about the rich man that, when Lazarus just wanted the crumbs off his table, he refused. That story had a profound impact on me ever since I was a kid. Like, if I have more food than I need, I have to share some of it with someone that's less fortunate.
Oh, I thought you meant you were waiting to find out who's got a table with good crumbs.
Like when I see someone a bag or somebody comes up and has some change, automatically I have to give them something because I always think of that story.
My suggestion to everybody is never give them money.
Right.
Always give them food or sit down and buy them the meal.
Well, no, I don't give them, I'm not gonna give them enough to buy any alcohol, but I'll give them at least a little something so they get something to eat.
Just between you and me, 5 little somethings add up to 1 alcohol.
Well, I mean, a dollar.
Yeah.
Something just so they can get a little something.
You've never had any of that Thunderbird, have you?
Can I have $2?
Just one.
Anyway, I always believed in that myself. I had a guy in Camden once that came up to me and asked for enough money to buy himself a sandwich and a coffee. And I said, well, no, I said, why don't I buy you something to eat? I said, I'll get you a lot more than I'd ever give you enough money to buy. He says, okay. So we go into the deli across the street from the church. And we're eating. And he's getting the hamburgers and the French fries and the shake and I kept telling him, I said, don't be shy. I said, whatever you want. And and I ate too. And when we're all done eating, I was getting ready. I was paying the check to the waiter, and I said to him, I said, by the way, I said, we've been sitting here talking all this time. And I said, you never told me your name. He looks me square in the eyes and he says, Jesus. I thought, oh shit. I should have bought him the steak. But I don't know if that was really Jesus. I don't know if that guy was just trying to make me feel good.
Maybe Jesus can appear like in a certain, just to test you to see how you are.
Trust me, I felt tested.
Hey, well, be careful. You can be entertaining agent, but
That's right.
Yeah,
be aware.
that's
what they
right.
say,
Yeah.
You could be sitting right here.
You may be entertaining angels unawares. I promise you one thing, I am not an angel, so don't worry about it. Anyway, I think we've done a lot of really good talking, and we got a little bit away from the subject. The subject was faith, uncertainty of faith. The one that says, I believe, but I'm not sure. I believe, but it's not making sense to me. I believe, but I just don't see how it could possibly be true. I believe, but and we have an opportunity in that moment of doubt or of uncertainty to use that to bolster our position of faith, to put us in a place where we realize that we are right. It is worth believing. It is the truth of God. It is the love of Jesus and all the different things that come up. So let's close with a prayer. I didn't say the closing prayer yet, did I? I said that and somebody says, just 1 minute. And that was 30 minutes ago. It's like
No.
take 2 weeks to get over the hump, you know? God, thank you for grounding me with confidence and guiding me through doubt. I offer you my very best intentions to follow you, grateful for your grace and forgiveness when I falter and fall short. I believe, Lord. Help my unbelief. Amen. Oh. So you're going to be back again, or was this enough for you?
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday, 11 in the morning or 5 at night, whichever you like.
I'll apply.
Thank you, Carol. Did you get what you wanted out of this?
Yes.
God bless you. I heard you laugh a few times.
Real.
I tend to do that to people. All right. Well, we love you and we'll see you again. All right.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.